Alright, so we just finished with English level check interview round, right? And it was mentioned for us that there will be one more interview level with manager, right? So what is this interview about? So my manager looking for a lot of stuff, right, on that kind of interview. He's trying to understand if that specific person will be able to work in that specific team, right, and bring some value. So that's why he would like to see, let's say, overall understanding of area, right? Sometimes he could also ask about past experience, right, to be able to understand how you could present yourself, right? And also his idea, or for example, sometimes it's on HRs, right? It's to be able to understand if the specific person have good soft skills. So if I'm talking about soft skills, I'm meaning here that that specific person, let's say, not so aggressive, so there will be no problems with the future, let's say, teammates, right? That that specific person could work in the team, or if it's like person who is like preferred to work as individual player, right? So there are a lot of stuff for us to check in terms of soft skills, to be able to understand that like that specific culture that we were able to build in the specific, let's say, company or in the specific team, right? Let's say will be not destroyed, right, in some team. So that's why we are looking for this soft skills check, right? And usually, let's say, we could understand the basics. Like, for example, if that person could see that somebody more experienced, right? Or if that person could see that somebody has less experience, right? So what is his, will be positioned on that, right? So how he will deal with that. And well, let's say if you would like to get more information about how to check soft skills, right, you could Google for it, right, and get something like a soft skill matrix, right? And in terms of the soft skill matrix, you will be able to get a table, right? And this table, you will be able to see basic questions, right? So if you don't have such kind of, let's say, interview process level in your company, right, and you would like to introduce something like this, right? So for that, you could, as I mentioned, Google it, find soft skill matrix, right, or table with the questions, right, and you could include it into your company interviews, right? And it could be on manager level, or it could be on HR verification level, right? Because on some companies, when HRs, let's say, do pre-screening of specific persons, they are looking for the soft skills, right? And they are mentioning, like, for example, at this moment we were able to assess that, for example, level of the specific person, it's 90%, right? So he will be loyal for the company, right? So we will be able to adapt him quickly, and so on and so forth, right? And then they could, like, even decide, right, if we should move forward with that interview and run technical, right, check or not. As I just mentioned, in different companies we have different stages, right? In some companies, all of them might be in one interview, right? In some companies, all of them might be in a different interview. So that's why you could have, let's say, 5 different rounds of interview. Like, for example, I was able to see that in some companies, after English check, after soft skills check, right, there was 2 technical interviews. So first technical interview was about theory, right? So tell us that, tell us this, right? And then there was another technical interview related to, so here is a code, right? And here is a use case. Or for example, here is a use case coded. And it's really interesting interview. Let's say, I love it, right? And here is some, let's say, tricks for you guys, right? So when you are in such kind of interview, right, and you was able to read the use case, right, and so of course there are somebody looking with you how you're writing it, right? So in that case, please don't be quiet, right? Let's say you could read the task, right, and you could let's say think about it, right, and pronounce it, right? So in that case, you will be able to share with that team, right, who is checking your level of what is your thoughts around that specific use case, right, about that specific task and so on and so forth. Like, for example, if you see some task, right, so each time when in a company we have a new contact added, right, so in that case we should increment the counter of on our account, right, by one, right? So, and you could start to think, like about this task, and you could mention, like for example, no, there are different approaches which are more useful for us. Like for example, let's use roll-up summaries, right, or something like this, right? Another technique, and not write Apex code, let's say, to calculate the data, right? That will help them to understand your experience as well, right? Because if you will just take the specific task, right, and do it, it will not show them, well, let's say, that you actually analyzing something that you was able to receive, right? Let's say you need to show that you are smart, right? So it's a first advice from my side, right? Second advice, it's I think that at the end they might still ask you, right? Okay, we understand it. It's good that you mentioned that. So, but please show us how you will do it on the code level, right? So in that case, you could again use a trick, right? And you could explain that, like there are a different way to do it better, right? But if you guys want it, I could write that specific code, right? And for example, in my past experience, I was able to hear, all right, so let's do it just for, let's say, to see how you will organize your code. So when I was able to start, like writing some code, right, I'm explaining why I'm, for example, using bulkification, right? Why I'm putting limits in the SQL queries and so on and so forth, right? And when I'm doing so, right, I'm also mentioning for them some, for example, patterns that I know, like for example, all right, so I will just, for example, put SQL query here, right? But in, let's say, real project, I would prefer to put it, for example, in the Java classes, right, where I will have, let's say, access to the SQL builder, right, for me to be able to control with or without sharing, right? And also I will be able in that class to apply, for example, security checks for me to be able to strip inaccessible fields, or for example add with security enforced into the SQL query, right, and so on and so forth. So you see, when you providing all this information, right, it show your experience, right, in a better way than you just will write some specific code, right, and just it, they will be able to